Hey guys, Lucas here. I just wanted to do a quick X570 update video and talk about some other stuff. Some stuff I figured out today. So, there's a few unusual things about socket AM4, both bad and great. Now, I've had my Ryzen 5 3600 for a week now, and I'm still trying to understand what it means to overclock on Ryzen. And I don't know if it's Ryzen in general or just 3rd gen, but it's not just about clock frequency anymore. It's really about everything else, and it's the most self-involved thing ever. Now, forcing high clocks, it depends on the multiplier, and getting it stable depends on vCore and your ability to control vDroop. File that much under duh. But memory speed and being able to drive that memory controller depend on so many things, like the board itself. No joke, just having bad PCB is a showstopper, but that usually has a symptom of being DOA. Memory topology is another, and trace quality, which shouldn't be an issue on PCIe 4 boards, but as long as you're on X570, you're golden. It might be an issue on some B450 boards, but if you're using Ryzen 3rd Gen, that's like all that matters. Memory overclocking should be effortless on 3rd Gen Ryzen with any ultra high bandwidth daisy chain board, and it should be doable on X470 and B450. I would say the average potential between them is in the 90th percentile, so good luck. Having good memory like my amazing Micron E die memory kit definitely helps, but I haven't even bothered clocking it past 3800 yet, and I'm probably not going to bother since Infinity Fabric tops out at 1900, and I haven't figured out how to push it past that. So, this memory has shockingly great latency at higher voltages, but the timings are still trash, and I don't get why. I've got them running dual channel at 20, 20, 20, 42, 82, and can't figure out how to tighten this down any further. It could be related to SoC or some other voltage hidden away, but for now just getting this to post reliably and stable at 1.4 VMEM is good enough for me when the performance and latency are already behaving better than some of Samsung's best cherry-picked B-die. Also, I'm not using the dinky little stealth. What is it called? This Spire cooler for anything but reference here. Look at it. I mean, just look at it. Now, I'm sure it's fine for overclock. I mean, seriously, look at it. This is so low profile. I'm sure it's great for a rack server, but not much else. So by the time I use that, this board will be, end of life, and so will its purpose, and it won't be anywhere near me by the time it has this cooler on it. I've been using this beastly FX Wraith Spire, and as expected, it does quite the great job. Temps hover around 40C in VR at 2.2 gigahertz on the balanced plan, and it ramps up to 65C on full power. It feels like Ryzen's base clock performance scales with temperature, but I haven't noticed gains in frame rate at full power. Power boost goes unstable past 4.2, and beyond that the temperatures go hyperbolic. I've already had one thermal freakout during a Cinebench run, and it shut itself off after a few seconds at 85C with this cooler. Not that one. That's awesome. I want to try getting this to happen again with water cooling, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about here. So, in front of me, I have a Coolance CPU 300 H06 CPU cooler. It's a CPU cooler, obviously, it's in the name. From my 2004 era of computing, and it's rated for 300 watts of heat dissipation. Now, the engineering resin is unlike anything on the planet, and it's a gold-plated copper block in a world full of nickel-plated everything these days. It also has its sister GPU block right there. I had a small aluminum radiator that could handle maybe half of that load from a 3 gigahertz Prescott with three little 80mm fans blowing loud almost 100% of the time in games like Half-Life and Wheel of Time. Anyway, this is a really interesting piece of hardware. I've never seen a stock Pentium 4 cooler, but I believe the mounting points, just imagine a box around the cooler, would slot into 4 nooks, like with this H-pattern adapter here. The center of the block has 3 indents for centering the bracket for pressure distribution from the socket, but I've never needed to do any off-center adjustments because all my boards were built correctly. Coolants eventually came out with a copy of this mounting mechanism for AM2 Plus and AM3 boards, which I really needed so badly when I built my Phenom 2 system back in 2009. It's been 10 years. Nothing about that really changed on AM3 Plus when I went FX, but after 6 months on AM3 I stopped using water cooling, and I needed to figure out some other stuff before touching it again. So I went back to stock air coolers, and the mounting mechanisms aren't like Intel's Pentium 4 stuff at all. They're more like Pentium 3 and Athlon XP era. This cooler became a forgotten relic until I got back into water cooling around this time last year with an FX8370, and I'm glad that I did. AMD 970 was kicking my ass with runaway temps in the 70s and high 80s. I never water cooled the FX on my BioStar board, but I did make use of this little guy to bring the Northbridge temps down to the 60s, and eventually flat 40 when I went to a Gigabyte 970 board. I wanted to reuse this hardware on my X570 setup, but because it's a newer socket, some attention is needed. The stock cooler doesn't even use retention brackets, which is one red flag. The stock brackets work with the FX Wraith cooler, and most likely the stock cooler for my Phenom 2X4, but that's where similarities end because these Pentium 4 to AM3 adapter brackets are quite literally the only bridge I have for continuing to use the CPU cooler, and they don't line up on AM4, which means I can't use this or my CPU cooler, and will need another adapter which won't be in production because this relic is long gone from everyone's list. But what if there was a way to continue using it? I might figure that out soon. Looking at this, I came up with the genius idea of reversing the retention brackets. So, digging through my old kit, it turns out I had another set of brackets for those older Pentium 3 and Athlon XP boards, where if I bore out the center pigs, they'll fit into the retention brackets and I can seat them with a long threaded bolt. Now if that's too awkward to do, I could always cut the wings off and make new center retention hooks, like I have already outlined in marker here. How nice would that be if it turns out I already have everything I need to make this work? I'm definitely thinking about getting started on that soon, but there's something else I needed to mention. The point of me water cooling a Pentium 4 board was not just overclocking, but to control the Northbridge temps. And that was also the point on a 790 board when I went AM3. The same went for water cooling my last two 970 boards. But I changed out the radiator for something a bit more deserving when I changed boards. So now here we are with X570 and no way to mount a water block on that ridiculous location. It interferes with a video card no matter what. It's just too awkward. I could always opt to water cool the video card and get more profile room to cool the X570, but water cooling an RX 580 Red Devil is stupid. So, yeah. A nice card with runaway thermals and VR and the placement of the X570 chip, especially on this board, sucks. It's the same situation on most, if not every other X570 board out there, so if you don't have the patience for it, my advice is to stick to B450, or just wait for B550. You won't have PCI Express 4, but then again, you don't risk thermal runaway from any mission-critical components either. Not that it's been a problem, because that tiny fan actually has the situation under control. For now. So who knows where this goes? Am I once again going through an Asus board that loses meaning after 6 months, or has a catastrophic event like my Pentium 4 board, or is this finally a sign of something good? Only time will tell. Until then, I've got some fabrication work to do, so that's the end of the video. Like, comment, subscribe, comment any questions or suggestions below, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.